Hi, my name is Bernard Guy. I'm the ATV Marketing Director for Can-Am, and today we're going to talk about the front end of the new DS450. The engineers were trying to achieve the lowest unsprung weight. That was our first big challenge to achieve. And with the front end, they decided to go with a double A-arm setup, but with full aluminum forged upper and lower A-arm. And the lower A-arm in aluminum is a first in the ATV industry. That's a forged aluminum piece, one piece, and that extremely resistant. You'll also notice the shape of that forged A-arm, and that's to make sure that we don't over-design it. It's very thin at the extremities because that's where the load is the least, but that's very thick here where the shock mounts. So that was optimized to make sure that we have the lowest weight possible, yet the best strength. Now, that's nice, but that's not enough. We wanted to have also the lightest components because unsprung weight is the tire, the wheels, and all of that, everything that goes, that moves up and down with the wheel. So we went for an aluminum knuckle, but just not any aluminum knuckle. An aluminum knuckle made of one piece integrating the spindle. Normally this piece is made of steel. In other designs, that's typical sport ATV spindle and knuckle assembly. And it's a steel shaft inserted in an aluminum part. Now this forged spindle is a one piece, and you'll notice that it's much shorter than the typical design. And the goal of that is basically to have much less kickback on the steering. Basically, because the spindle is so short, you basically cut all the impact being transmitted to the steering system on the wheel. If the lever is very long, it's going to be very difficult to hold back this part when you're hitting a bump. And that's basically, you're going to feel it in the steering because you're going to be the one holding it back. But since it's so short, you're feeling about half of what you would normally feel, and that's a lot reduced kickback. So it's a very lightweight part, full aluminum, less kickback, which is good for the ride. But they didn't stop there either. They wanted to achieve what we call a negative scrub radius. And they needed that also to have the short spindle. Let me just illustrate here. You have here a positive scrub radius. That is when the kingpin axis here is defined between the two pivot points, the two ball joints. And when that kingpin axis is on the inner side of the center line of the wheel, we call that a negative scrub radius. And basically what it does, that's a typical sport ATV wheel design. And here you have a positive scrub radius, which is when the kingpin axis is on the outer side of the wheel design. That's what every engineer would like to have. All sports cars, all ATVs with bigger wheels, all engineers are trying to achieve a very vertical kingpin axis and on the negative side for the scrub radius. But that has never been done on a 10-inch sport ATV. Because the wheel is so small, it's very difficult to package what it takes. So how did they manage to package it like that? It's basically by having the disc brake becoming a ring and having the caliper inverted. Basically in a traditional design, what you have is the disc is like this and your caliper is over and above. That caliper takes space inside the wheel. Okay? What we have here is a very narrow ring, very wide ring, as wide basically as the inside of the wheel, but the caliper is pinching that ring from the inside instead of the outside on the disc. It's basically pinching the ring from the inside. That's why we call this design an inverted caliper brake design. That allowed us to have the largest brake diameter possible inside a 10-inch wheel. But that also allowed us to push the ball joint basically inside the brake flame. And when you have that, you have the longest A-arm possible for a 46-inch ATV, which reduces scrub. You know, scrub is this arc motion of a double A-arm design, and the wheel is just traveling back and forth when the wheel travels up and down. And by having the longest A-arm possible, you basically reduce the arc. Instead of going like this, you're basically going like that, and with much less scrub. And scrub is not a good thing to have on a suspension design. So basically, you have the longest A-arm possible, and you manage to package inside the wheel. The ball joints are inside the wheel, Your kingpin axis is very vertical, and you have a negative scrub radius, which helps tracking under hard braking. That allows to have the very short spindle with less kickback, and the whole knuckle all in aluminum. All of that was to achieve the lowest unsprung weight, and we did. We have the lowest unsprung weight in the industry by about like 3 pounds on the bike, and that's huge in terms of unsprung weight reduction.